Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm back. I hope that you can see my screen right now. You probably can't see me, but that's okay. So, today we are going to talk about puppy and dog socialization. And I think the first thing is let me just change this view so you can actually see a little bit more of that. Okay. So, I think the first thing that I want to talk about is what is the difference actually between puppy and dog socialization um, pre-COVID or post-COVID, whatever that is going to mean, and now? And in reality, for a lot of our animals, it doesn't actually make a huge difference unless they're very, very social or um, they're puppies. So the first thing I'm going to say is for those of us who have fearful or reactive dogs, um, COVID actually can be a time of some relief, which um, might be might be sad to say, but it's actually I've joked around with a lot of training colleagues that this is so great because all of us who have reactive dogs, people are actually staying away from us, so our dogs are reacting less, and we actually have the space to start working on training because people aren't approaching and surprising us. But on that note, what I was going to say is if you do have a reactive or fearful dog, um, what I'd recommend to you is actually talk to your trainer before you bring your dog back into social scenarios that they were reactive during before, or social scenarios where they appeared fearful. I would strongly recommend that you talk to your certified trainer before you bring them back into those environments and situations. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what socialization is. We're going to talk about your dog's social needs, and we're going to talk about your social needs, you, the human. So, first of all, socialization. What is socialization? So, a lot of people hear socialization is very important. You have to make sure your dog gets socialized and stays socialized. Um, and I think that what a lot of people think that means is, you keep having your dog meet new people, you keep having your dog go to the dog park, um, which in many cases, such as for my dog, that might be true. My dog really enjoys socializing with large groups of dogs and enjoys meeting a lot of new people. But the word socialization gets bandied about in this way where people feel like it's their obligation to keep bringing their dogs into social settings regardless of what the dog is telling them. So what I would like to see going out into the world as far as messages about socialization is what we're supposed to do as our dog's guardians. So in order for socialization to actually be useful and healthy, which means dogs getting social needs met and the dog is feeling safe and the dog is having an enjoyable time doing it, we need to look at their body language. So these dogs appear to be having some fun, except for maybe this guy in the middle. These guys have got open mouths. Um, that looks like a swishy tail. I mean, these guys are just running, but we can talk more about body language during a later Facebook Live. So, body language. If your dog is telling you that they're not enjoying what is happening, that moment of socialization is not actually doing what it's supposed to do for your dog. Um, it's not meeting their social needs if they're afraid. Um, what we all need to do is take a closer look at what our dogs are telling us and I've noted, even with myself, that we can. I had a teacher at one point who said we kind of put a callus over kind of our ability to read what they're telling us because we have human agendas, and a lot of times we say, "Oh, well, my agenda is I want to have everybody over for to watch the game, and I don't care that my dog is hiding behind objects and shrinking away when people reach for him." So I would strongly recommend, yeah, watching your dog's body language, and if they're enjoying themselves, if they've got a loose body, if they've got a loose wiggly tail, if they've got an open mouth, not a pinched closed mouth, if they're doing play bows, stuff like that, or just doing a lot of sniffing, um, and looking relaxed, then yeah, they're probably having a pretty good time. If they're hiding, if they're moving away, if their body looks tensed, if their mouth is pinched shut, if they're doing a lot of yawning for no reason, um, and the obvious signs of fear like tucked tail, or obvious signs of discomfort like lifting lip, um, and things like that, then I would give them some time. Give them some time not in that social scenario. Okay, so let's talk about individual dog social needs. Um, Personality wise, you have dogs that really need to be with other dogs. You have dogs that really need to be with new people. And again, you want to watch your dog's body language. If your dog is telling you or has told you in the past pre-COVID that they don't necessarily enjoy spending time with other people, but they like dogs, taking them to a dog park where they can just play with other dogs and they play well, they have good social skills with dogs, that's fine to do. Or if they're telling you, if they've told you in the past, oh, I don't really enjoy playing with other dogs. When I go to the dog park, I either move away from everybody or I spend the entire time mounting them so that I can feel more comfortable, and trying to seek height around them to feel more comfortable, then maybe they actually just want to hang out with you and your human friends. And it's actually a good thing to listen to that and let them socialize with the species that they're interested in socializing with. Okay, you've got introverts and extroverts, and um, when people talk about introverts and extroverts, I think a lot of times people think introverts like to be alone, and extroverts get energy from being around a lot of other people. But I think it's a little more complicated, and a lot of introverted people actually, and dogs, enjoy spending time with one friend or maybe two friends, and they're just the couple of friends that they know well and they trust. And that's something to take into account. A lot of dogs actually don't enjoy being around 15 other dogs in the park, and they might want to spend time with one or two other dogs. This fear and reactivity, again, if your dog's showing these signs, talk to your trainer about what's happening before you bring them into situations where they feel like they need to hide again. Okay, personality changes with environment. We just talked about that. Personality changes with age. So this is one thing that a lot of people, um, uh, I'll use the term that we talked about before, kind of have a callus over our ability to read their body language. So here's how we're gonna talk about age and define dogs' ages. So we're gonna say that adults are above 3 years old, and I have that little sign in front of the three because behavioral and social adulthood for a dog can come at two. It can come at four, but it's around 3 years old when you're going to find that your dog's social needs change. So a dog that previously maybe had a really great time at the dog park, roughhousing with a lot of other dogs, might not anymore. And that dog might only want to play with one or two friends, or that dog might want to stay home and actually just do something with you. Um, we're going to call seniors dogs over 7 years, so that's a veterinary definition. And I definitely know a ton of dogs who are 7 years or 8 years old, and they're super energetic. They love going for long hikes. Having that definition doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need social activity or exercise. They still need those things. They just need them to be appropriate for them. Um, okay, young adults and adolescents. So young adults, I would call any dog that is no longer a puppy physically, but has not reached that social maturity or behavioral maturity that they might around 3 years old. So young adults often have um, pretty high social needs. Those might be the dogs that you see having a really good time at the dog park. And mind you, not every young adult is going to have a good time, but those might be the ones that you see the most there. Adolescents are going to have similar social needs, so they're more likely again to have a good time with a lot of other dogs. Um, and I put this in here, the 4 to 6 month to a year age, because we're talking about dogs that have already been fully vaccinated. So, and that means they have their rabies shot and they have their full arsenal of DA2PP or DHPP. So that usually means a single shot plus 3 boosters. Um, and the other thing is that usually dogs at 6 months of age have attained an adult immune system by that point. So we're talking about dogs that can be outside, touching the ground, and meeting other dogs. And lastly, we're going to talk about puppies that are up to 4 to 6 months old. And so those are the dogs that are not yet fully vaccinated. They can't be touching the ground outside without risk of contracting parvovirus. Um, and they don't have their vaccinations, or all of them yet. Okay, so seniors, we just talked about this. With our senior and adult dogs, for them it might be pretty easy actually to meet their social needs, because at this age they might decide, oh, I don't want to go to the dog park and spend that time with all of these other dogs. Maybe they just want to play ball with you, or maybe they just want to go for a hike. When I talk about training, I'm not talking about obedience training. I'm talking about, something they have fun doing. So games where they have to work on something and work their minds. Okay, so let's talk about these young adults and adolescents. Um, Both of these age groups are going to have similar social needs and similar physical needs. These are our dogs at their physical prime. So the equivalent might be kids, or teens that are about 12 years old, up to people who are like maybe 28 or 29. This is give or take some years. So we're talking about an age where human beings also have different social needs. So at that age, a lot of people want to meet as many people as they can. Um, they want to go to parties. They want to go to the club. It's difficult. It's very hard for them to not get that social activity in. Um, and so this is where you may actually want to allow them to engage with that while you are keeping yourself safe. So obviously, these kids all have their vaccinations. Okay, how do we do this? Well, before I go to that, dog parks. Um, any place where you are having your dog socialize with other dogs, there's of course going to be other people. And this is going to be your decision about what is safe for you in terms of risk reduction for COVID. So I'm a person that, because my dog really enjoys social time with other dogs, I mask up, I go to the dog park, and I stay more than 6 feet from everybody else. And I manage my dog in a way where um, she's not going to get involved with any other dog's tussles with another. So there's no chance that I'm going to be having to grab my dog while another person grabs theirs and we're face to face. So that's something that I would recommend if you're going to go to a dog park. Okay, so what else needs to happen here? Um, what does appropriate play look like? So I don't have a slide for that, but I do. I'm just going to tell you all about it. So how do you choose your dog park? So what I would do when I go to a dog park is I don't get my dog out of the car until I've gone and I've actually observed what those dogs are doing. So if the dogs are playing politely and there aren't any scuffles breaking out, um, and the owners are watching their dogs and walking around with them and not just, talking with each other, or sitting on a bench or looking at their phones, then I might bring my dog in. I also have to make sure that the other dogs in there have a similar play style or a play style that matches hers. So if your dog's really rough and tumble and you know by the way that the other dogs are playing that they're going to get overwhelmed, I wouldn't bring your dog in. If you see that the other dogs are really rough and tumble and you have a dog that's more into one-on-one play and does a lot of like gentle no touch play, then I wouldn't bring them in either at that time. I would choose a different activity for the day. Um, appropriate play. Um, I have some basic guidelines about what I will um, allow my dog to engage in. So things that we like to see when dogs are playing or puppies are playing. You like to see play bells. So you know the position where the rear end is up and the front paws are down. Um, I like to see loose bodies, so not tense bodies. I like to see loose tails. So a lot of people think a tail very high in the air that's wagging is a positive thing, and that's not necessarily true. What you want to see is um, swish, for lack of a better word, some looseness in that tail. I mean, with some dogs, like this pug dog over here, that tail's not going to have any swish because it's in a permanent curl, right? And dogs that I don't know if this dog has any tail, it might be docked. Obviously with a docked tail, you can't see the swish, but with a dog that has a long tail like this, you can tell when it's got more movement. Other things that are good to see: open mouths. So some people think, oh, when I can see a dog's teeth, um, that's not a good thing. But in actuality, when dogs are playing with each other and they have open mouths and they're panting, that's a sign of relaxation. They're going to shut their mouths if they suddenly get scared or suddenly get angry. So that game of kind of mouth wrestling on the ground and playing, I can open my mouth wider than yours. That's really great. Those are open and relaxed mouths. Other things you want to see, um, usually, there's been a lot of research about this. Dogs actually enjoy playing in pairs. And so if you see kind of some third wheeling or fifth wheeling, that's not a great situation to put your dog in. If you see them splitting off in pairs and just kind of amiably hanging out two by two, that's great. That's kind of what they do naturally. You also want to see a lot of switching roles. So, and this is depending on what your dog's like. So switching roles, what I mean is somebody's the chaser, somebody's the chasee, and then after maybe 10 seconds, then they turn around and then suddenly the chaser is the chasee and vice versa. Um, you want to see, if one dog's wrestling and they're on top of the other dog, they hop off and try and engage the other dog to then change positions or change activities. You want to see a change in activities where they're not doing the same thing over and over again. And we can talk more about what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. I'm actually going to save some of that information for another time. Some things that I would say very quickly, I would end the play session for. Um, if I see that my dog or a dog engaging with her is continuously biting sensitive areas, and it's very apparent that the bitee is not enjoying this, and I'm talking about, biting another dog's butt as they turn around and try and move away, grabbing ears or tails or genitals and not letting go. Um, what else? Um, I think it's complicated guarding, and I'm talking about intense guarding where a dog is snarling, snapping over a toy or a water bowl or a person or a resting place in a yard. I might actually just have my dog leave the yard. Okay, so that's a little bit about appropriate play. Um, I'm just going to briefly talk about doggy daycares. In order to meet your dog's social needs, some people do take their dogs to doggy daycare, and I have mixed feelings about it for the same reasons that I have mixed feelings about uh, taking your dog to the dog park. I think it's very specific, and it's important to pick the right daycare. It's important to pick one where there's maximum 6 dogs per human handler. It's important to pick one where, and this is a tricky one, they will fire a client. So you want a daycare where they are picky about the behavior of the dogs in there. So if they will fire a client, meaning there's a dog that's not doing well in there and maybe getting into a lot of scuffles or is just too scared, that's a positive thing. Um, a little bit more about doggy daycares. You want to pick daycares where they have rest times. So they're not necessarily playing for 8 hours a day, but the dogs do get to have some time alone. And oh, there's my dog. She's dreaming. Um, and I mean, in general, if you do want to use a doggy daycare in order to meet your dog's social needs, what I would recommend is maybe just booking a half day, maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and that way your dog is getting that social activity, but it's cut off at 2 to 4 hours. If you have your dog going 8 hours a day or more for 5 days a week, what a lot of people develop is a dog who um, is a super athlete. So dogs can play a lot harder and faster than they can with people. And if they're working their muscles every day for that long, they're going to expect that every day. And I don't know about you, but I can't do that with my dog every day. Even if I could keep up with her physically, I have to work. So and I have to do other things. So that's a really good reason to use them, but use them carefully. Okay, we just talked about that. Okay, puppies. So puppies during COVID. This is the tricky part, right? Because um, all the information we have about socialization with puppies is what we've been hearing for the past couple of decades. Um, is that between when you get your puppy, which is probably around uh, well, it depends on where you get your puppy, but a lot of people get their puppies at 8 weeks. Between 8 weeks and about 4 months, that's your prime socialization period, right? So that's when you can and should introduce your puppy to all kinds of new things, people, etc. um, and do it carefully so that they're having a positive interaction with that whatever it is or whoever it is. um, but the tricky thing is during COVID, we're not seeing that many people. So how are you supposed to do this? What I would recommend is with the very young puppies that are not vaccinated, um, strollers. It sounds crazy, and people are going to look at you and say, "Oh my God, you put your dog in a stroller," but it's actually a really good way to do this. I wouldn't, I wouldn't shove your dog into the stroller. I wouldn't force them to be in it if they hate being in it. Um, but if you can get one of those enclosed strollers, um, and you know give your dog some treats in there, get them used to hanging out in it with the flaps zippered shut. Or if your dog is a really small one and doesn't mind being in a backpack, and you can tell they're relaxed in there, taking them out in a backpack where they can see outside of it. So they have those little cat backpacks where they can see outside through a mesh window or something like that. And those are both great options. Some people have slings or little bags that they can put their small dogs in. And so all of these are good options just to take your dog around the outdoors so they can see and hear and smell new people and new dogs without touching the ground and risking infection with parvovirus. So that is That's my first recommendation. And again, do it carefully. You want to watch your dog for signs of fear. If your dog shows signs of fear when they're interacting with something new, or when they're seeing or hearing or smelling something new, you want to move away from it, and then you want to allow them to engage with it again at a distance where they feel safe. You can bring treats. Having treats on hand is a really good idea so that the second you see them note something new, so like let's see, they see a garbage truck from far away, which is great. It's a good time to pair that with some treats and just, put one or two treats in and give them some praise and walk away. So the exposure doesn't have to be long. It's actually better if it's short and positive. Oh, that's cute. Okay, so this is just the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior and their position on puppy socialization. It is super important to do during those first 16 weeks of life. Um, and the reason is that if you have a dog that has never been exposed to people and dogs, you're much more likely to have behavioral issues in the future, just because it's going to be scary. Um, so whether they react with external signs of fear or they react with aggression or reactivity, um, it's a lot easier to train a dog that's already been exposed to those things at least a couple of times. Um, they're just going to be a lot more well adjusted. So if anybody needs this, I can send you the link for this little sheet by the AVSAB. Okay, I decided to add Professor Daniel Mills in here. Um, Daniel Mills is a researcher on behavior, and what he did was he looked at prior research about puppy socialization and wanted to know why people, one, decided that the socialization period ends at about 16 weeks, um, and why nobody could agree on when that ended. So some people say 12 weeks, some people say 16, some people say 14, some people say it extends beyond that. And there's a reason for that. And I'm not going to go into the details of the research so much, but I am going to tell you that what he discovered was that the previous research was not done well. It wasn't accurate, and the reason people decided that that was the age at which socialization no longer was effective was actually because what they'd been doing was handling dogs from a very young age without the dog's consent. So they were just picking up puppies and not looking at those signals um, of whether the dog was comfortable or not, and they weren't necessarily making it a good experience for the puppy. So what's happening actually is that at about 12 or 14 or 16 weeks, those dogs started showing signs that they really disliked people and really disliked handling. And it was not because um, the socialization was not working any longer, but it was because they did not have the physical power to tell anybody they didn't like it. So at about that age where the dog is hitting adolescence, that's where they're starting to come into their bodies. They have more physical power. They're able to see the effects of moving away or mouthing or nipping. And what it does, generally, what it means is they can get what they want. They can get away if they struggle or they mouth when they're being picked up and restrained at that age. And so the scientists doing that study from many, many years ago did not realize that it was just because the younger puppies, they didn't have control over their bodies. They couldn't tell anybody they didn't like what was happening. So with the new research, what we're finding is that the socialization that we're doing with our puppies from about 6 or 8 weeks to 16 weeks, it is still super important, and we do still need to do it in a very careful way. But, and what's most important prior to us even getting the puppies is that their first exposure to things is a good experience. So, in the home of your puppy's breeder or wherever they were born, if their first exposure to a person was scary, you have a lot of work ahead of you. You have many, many exposures to people while you have your puppy, where you need to make it a really, really positive experience to try and deflate that first experience, which was going to be the strongest in your pup's memory, um, and so on and so forth. So if their first exposures all the way up to the 25th exposure to something new were all very scary, again, you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you. And that's the reason that that socialization period is very important. And it's also why you may not find it very effective. So even if you do all the right things, you might find that they still have some fear. Um, but we can talk more about that in the future. I just wanted to add a little bit more information on why it is so important to try to get that socialization in and do it well. So for right now, I would say, during COVID, yeah, use those strollers, use the backpacks, and let's talk about how we can do this well, all these other things. People, what you can do, some examples are you may not want to have a lot of contact with people, but you can show them people from a distance. You can have your dog meet everybody that's in your COVID bubble. Um, you can show them people and pair them seeing the people with a treat. Um, you can play music in your home. You can play sounds of people talking or singing, laughing, making lots of different noises. Socializing to dogs. You can take your puppy to puppy socials, and we can talk more about how to pick a social that's safe for everybody. Um, Sounds, again, you can use recordings of a lot of things to help your puppy with socialization of that on that end. Surfaces, this is a great one. A lot of dogs, they leave the home for the first time and they're afraid because they don't want to walk on concrete or they don't want to walk on whatever it is you don't have in your house. That's something you can do in your home. You can, if you need to sanitize and you've got some concrete on your driveway, a good way to deal with this is go ahead and clean off your driveway with some bleach, let it dry, um, or spray it off and let it dry. And then get your puppy on leash and let them explore the concrete. Toss some treats on it, let them explore it. You can introduce them to other surfaces, whatever you don't have in your house, by ordering some linoleum from Home Depot, or ordering some tile, or maybe some wood chips, and just putting that in your own yard or your own home, to let your puppy explore new surfaces. Large objects, again, that stroller is going to be really, really important in doing this. So, like dogs seeing cars, buses, garbage trucks, um, ambulances, moving objects. So things like people's what is it called? Rolling luggage, shopping carts, balloons, all types of things that they are actually pretty spooky for most dogs. Handling. This is a really good one. So I can walk you through some of the exercises you can do to help your dog with veterinary and grooming experiences. And that's something that you can go ahead and just contact Two Paws Up Inc. if you need help with it. But it's a very, very good idea to get your dog used to, if it's a small dog, what does it feel like to be on top of a table? Can you put get a ramp so that they can learn how to walk up to the table themselves, um, and see what it's like to be up there. Equipment, getting your dog used to wearing a harness or a leash, because maybe you don't go for walks right now. Maybe they're too young. So just putting that stuff on and making it a good experience, and taking it off if they're scared and calling us if you need help. Um, and then lastly, what activities are you going to do with your dog in the future? So once COVID is, well, I won't say over, but once it's different and you start doing other activities that you're not doing now, what are those activities going to be, and is your dog going to be with you while you do them? So do you play in a band? Are you going to be having your bandmates come over? You might want to start playing the kind of music that you play, like some pre-recorded music at low volume, and then playing it at a louder volume, and then playing it at a louder volume. I wouldn't necessarily recommend having your dog in the room if you're going to play super loud music, and you're drumming. It's actually not good for their ears because they have such sensitive hearing. You could have your dog move into the yard or a further away room of the house when you do that. But in general, you want them to start getting exposures, soft exposures or medium exposures to that. You know, if you're going to be taking your dog in areas where people are shooting guns, um, then you might want them to listen to the sound of a gunshot pre-recorded and pair that with some treats. Um, and again, with all of this socialization, I want you to be really careful. The treats cannot come before the new thing or the sound or the object, whatever it is. Your dog has to experience whatever it is they're learning about, and then the something nice happens after. And we can talk about that some more at another time. Okay, puppy socials. How to pick a puppy social. Um, when you're picking a puppy social, you want kind of the same guidelines as when you're picking a daycare. You want there to be few puppies per handler, so ideally not more than 6 puppies per one human handler. Um, you want to choose a place where obviously they're looking for vaccinations. So every puppy who's going in should have the same number of DA2PPs or DHPPs. So most puppy socials are going to ask for 2 or 3 of them. And so that's what you want. You want a place that is very staunch about all the puppies having their vaccines before they go in. Um, you want to ask them about their COVID precautions. You want a place where ask them if they will take breaks. That's what we want. We don't want them to have a free for all for an hour. We want times where people take breaks with their dogs and do a little bit of training with treats. You want a place that has, strollers and skateboards and vacuum cleaners around the room. Just different objects for the puppies to just have around them while they're playing. Okay, so that's it for today. Tune in next week. I promise I'm going to get on and get the tech working right on time. We're going to talk about how to prepare your dog for when your family returns to work and school because they're going to be home alone. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day. And if you celebrate Lunar New Year, happy Lunar New Year. And if you celebrate Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day. Okay, one more cute picture. Aww. Okay, bye everybody.